Hello, friends. This is part of GPETS 20. Now we are concentrating on the summits which have taken place yesterday in Jakarta and the G20 summit, which is historical for India, that is Bharat, starts tomorrow. Though most of the guests, heads of state, have already arrived. So we had talked about the various groupings in the world. We'll mention some of the major ones. European Union, which started as a European community about 46 years ago. And from that, it grew to customs union. That means no customs within that group. It started with 6 countries, and then now it is about 40 countries. Then we started ASEAN. Yesterday, there was the 43rd summit of ASEAN, and it was called India or Bharat ASEAN Summit. And immediately followed by the East Asia Summit, which is of the East Asian countries, and that means ASEAN plus 6. And which are these 6? These are all our neighbors from India, starting with Myanmar, going on to Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. And so this grouping was earlier not part of ASEAN. ASEAN has become a large group, GDP-wise, population-wise. Then the European Union is next only to the US in terms of the joint GDP. And we have the SEO, which was started by China, and its working language is also Chinese. It's about 23 years ago, and it has kind of been rotating around China. But because corresponding BRICS was started, there is not that much interest left in the SEO anymore. And then there is Quad, but that is a military kind of thing, though COVID medicines and so on is stated. This is in the Pacific, kind of as a counter to China, where we have Australia, we have the USA, we have Japan and India. Then Indian Oceans Conference is there. It's been there for about 6 years now, and India has been supporting that. And this is all small countries around the Indian Ocean, now including the bigger country called Bangladesh. And so this is India's kind of thinking in terms of maritime coordination, sometimes maybe military also later on. Then we have the Eurasia, which is between the Europe and Asia, which is the 6 countries of stans: Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and so on. And it was under the influence of USSR earlier, and now it is kind of under the influence of China, or you can say China and Russia both. Now, coming closer home, we had started SAARC, that is South Asian Community, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Afghanistan, Nepal. The headquarters was in Nepal. It's about 20 odd years. Its major contribution has been a SAARC university, which is in Delhi, in Sakri. But it did not pick up because of the differences between India and Pakistan. And Pakistan did not like India's over-influence in that. But those things are kind of getting over. Pakistan citizens are realizing that they are not a competitor to India anymore. And now, then there was the Warsaw Pact after Second World War. On one hand, NATO was formed, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization of the European countries, Western European countries, and USA as a security organization. And corresponding to that was Warsaw Pact. Warsaw means that the meeting was held in capital of Poland, which was Warsaw. Though now Poland is part of the European Union. And this was under the influence of USSR, that means the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, of which the Russia was the major republic. And so these had countries like Romania and Czechoslovakia, Poland, and so on. They were all kind of defeated by Germany first and then relieved by the USSR. However, with the breakup of USSR in 91, all these became independent countries or independent republics. Their grouping therefore became part of the European Union, and Warsaw Pact kind of diminished in importance, or was not there actually. Now going to the South America and North America. North America has a community with Mexico separately, and with Canada separately, kind of free trade areas. And now lately, the manufacturing in Mexico is going up quite a lot. Of course, its per capita income is far lower than USA. The education is less. People are into a lot of other activities. They take things across the border. You can say kind of not legal activities. And however, this manufacturing is getting set up. So through that free trade area, the Chinese manufactured products are kind of getting into the USA. Now, coming to lower down, LAFTA, the Latin American Free Trade Association, there was a corresponding bank also completely under the control of USA. But over a period of time, it has declined in the importance. Because the US as a policy 20 odd years ago shifted that rather than funding developmental institutions, they will ask the private corporate sector to take care of these things. And so private corporate sector will evaluate the projects as they are. US government will give them the governmental umbrella to go and sign the contract, which they will not be able to get away from. And so there will be safety of the capital. And therefore, it has shifted to corporate. Now, coming to the UN type of institution, or the Bretton Woods Agreement, where IMF was formed, and the World Bank was formed. So World Bank also became primarily private capital of primarily the US and a little bit of Europe, going through them for developmental works. Its role has also been reducing somewhat because it's not that less expensive and so on. Now we come to the economic entities, which are ostensibly not related to security. That is G7. That means 7 richest countries, USA and Japan, and the 5 European countries, Germany and UK and France, Spain, Italy. And so it was a club. Now, however, I found out a little bit later that this is a club which the others don't accept, because this is a rich man's club. So the rich man club will decide things what are there in favor. They're not going to look at what the problems are there of the poor countries and so on. So an independent organization got floated, it's about 30 odd years, G77, that means 77 countries. And then China joined later, but did not become full-fledged members, so that is called G77 plus, because India has more influence in that organization. So that organization has relatively gone down. Then came the BRICS. We had the 15th summit of BRICS recently, 7 years ago. The National Development Bank was formed. It's also a developmental bank. It started with $100 billion equity, contributed equally by the 5 members, and has financed 30 odd projects, and there has been no non-performing assets so far. Now, once the G7, we will come now to therefore G20. So once the G7 lost its value, anything what they decided for the other nations, they decided that they'll take top 20 countries in terms of GDP. So India got included, China got included, Russia got included, 3 of these. And then you have Saudi Arabia, and Argentina, and Brazil, and even at the end of it, you have South Africa. So these countries got in. And these conferences have been held, but lately the problem has been the Ukraine conflict. Ukraine is not a member of this body. Ukraine is not a member of NATO, where there is a pact that, if any one NATO country is attacked, it will be considered an attack on all of them, and they will get together, do it. So now NATO has been helping UKR against Russia, but it's not a member of NATO. So it's because US decides that, there should be something going on against Russia. And then you have that they are not a member of EU either. So where does it take us? The last time, therefore, lots of discussion was held in Jakarta. It was a very successful summit, but in the end, they had also invited Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and Mr. Putin had not gone because of that reason. And so they could not come to what is called a communique, French word, of the G20 last year. Because that paragraph which they wanted to put was to criticize Russia for invading Ukraine, and Russia has a completely different version of what the problem is. So they said we will not sign it. So if not sign it, they said put it in the footnote put it in the footnote, then it is not agreed by everybody, and hence communique was not issued. Now this year, therefore, when India has been the president of G20, they started carefully with it. They made a very good organization. And what is that organization? Today we can say, because tomorrow the summit starts. And summit is of the heads of nations. But before that, the work was organized like this. Every country had a Sherpa. It's called Sherpa, just like somebody who helps you to climb the Everest. And Sherpas organized the meetings on different subject areas. And there were some subject areas relating to finance, and we'll come to that now very soon, in terms of what the agenda of this G20 has become, which will be discussed tomorrow. And we have been discussing this a little before also in terms of what is likely to happen. So now that likely to happen is kind of coming close, and then we'll see finally how the decision making takes place, and that is the learning part of it from managerial point of view, that how geopolitics affects various decisions. Now, so Sherpas got together, the committee meetings were there and all that. Believe it or not, in 60 different cities, the programs are organized. So now let's talk about the next section of it. So these Sherpas met organized meetings coming from all over the world, and there were all kinds of diverse subjects like tourism, climate action, and cryptos, and reform in the developmental institution, and so on. Financial related things were actually organized by the finance ministers of different countries who came, and Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman obviously organized it. And there also the Ukraine issue came, and therefore they had to give only a chairman's outcome, as it is called, summary. But be that as it may, this is all the diplomatic relations handling part of these things. And so let's briefly look at the issues which are identified, where the Sherpas have more or less agreed. And if there is some difference of opinion, it is stated there. And the heads of state, with the inputs from their own teams, can decide it. Now remember, a lot of delegations have come with these heads of institutions. The total number of 6,500 delegates who would be attending, and there will be 25 heads of state. It has been first of all decided by the Sherpas that the African Union with 55 members should be made a permanent member of G20 group, just like the European Union with 40 members is. Otherwise, European Union with 40 members and others mostly being European or mixed, maybe about 50 therefore European, still dominated the G20. So what's big news is that with Mr. Modi's efforts, the African Union will get inducted. Now, second is, as far as cryptos are concerned, they say the regulation should be made for cryptos, but it should not be legalized, which is a very good thing. Then we come to multilateral institutions. They say they have to be reformed because they are really not looking after the interests of the poorer populations and poorer countries. So we will see exactly what they say, or maybe there will be further meetings, because otherwise the IMF and World Bank will not get money, you see. So it's not that they will be doing a great favor, because if they are not helpful to these people, then National Development Bank, which has been formed of BRICS, will take a lead. Second. Now, third is in terms of climate action. There are some differences of opinion there, because Europe wants to push it faster. The voice of the global south is not heard, that you're talking about all these things about zero carbon and low carbon and all that, but we are really not responsible for it. Today you are talking today, what is there? Okay, and today also we are not same level as you are, but you have been doing this for 200, 250 years. You know, all the industrial revolution, all the coal-fired plants, boilers, this, that, furnaces have been throwing up this carbon and other emissions. And are we responsible for it? The European Union has become very strong, smart also. So basically what it is doing is, first of all, it has put a carbon tax. If, as per the climate action goals, you are not fulfilling them, then we'll put a tax on your things which come, because they are spoiling our environment. Who is our? And that climate tax will be used to clean up our environment. Now just imagine the richer people are saying that we are going to charge extra tax on the poorer people to be able to clean up our environment. But you do it with your own budgets. And they never allow others to talk about it. What about the accumulated carbon, which has been done over 200 years of your industrialization, which has spoiled the atmosphere all over the world? Do you want to not clean it? You're only talking about current carbon emissions, and they should be net zero. Now, which is where what is the issue which comes? The issue which comes is that earlier these goals were set up through the what was called the Paris Convention, because meeting was held in Paris, and that we will do it by 2070. Then further down the line, they said no, we should do it earlier. We should have the targets till 2050. Then there are some targets Europe has set up for 2030. It is in that context that they're talking about the EVs. Now, fine, you don't have sufficient oil there in Europe anyway, so you will be. But what will you be making your electricity with? Coal-fired, oil-fired, but you don't have oil. Or you'll be importing oil, and that is also pollutant. Or you'll do with nuclear power. It takes a lot of time, and you have control over the uranium resources along with Russia. Okay, so three things have happened. China, though, had said that voluntarily we'll reduce those dates to 2050, but you don't enforce it on us. Don't start charging us extra taxes and all that. So they are little opposing to that. The speed of doing this, Saudi Arabia has also resisted. Okay, so let's see what is the compromise which gets formed, and the cost of it can be both pricing and non-pricing. That means tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, additional tax as they come. Today they are talking about carbon tax, but maybe there can be other issues. Now, third, therefore, is the mutual cooperation on a number of factors, and fourth, finally, the Ukraine war. So these are the main things which will come out of this G20, is to cooperate with each other, cooperate on climate, on the reform of the multilateral institutions, and the overall economic development. So it's in that context that the AU will also become a member of it, and the richer countries will therefore have to calibrate their application of spare capital in a different fashion. On the other hand, countries in the global south, like China, Saudi Arabia, UAE, are also surplus of capital. So today, Asia, Africa does not have to rely only on the Western world. So rest of it, we will see how the dynamics takes place and how the geopolitics plays out on it. Now, Mr. Modi, when he went for the ASEAN meeting yesterday, he was welcomed a lot, and he has basically talked about cooperation among the global south there, and that's many things they can do together, including creating logistics systems, different kind. Within the Indian Ocean Ring, you can create logistic hubs and so on and so forth. And then East Asia, same thing. Closer to us, we have that trilateral road planned for quite some time, which goes from Mizoram to Myanmar to Vietnam, and then can connect to Thailand. The ASEAN people also formed a kind of cartel of rice people, leaving Thailand out. That means Cambodia and Philippines, and there is one more country. So now the point is that this is like a inflection point. The issue of Bharat versus India has come up, and there is a lot of philosophy behind it actually. So we will be hearing lots of these things as Bharat now. Bharat Mandapam is the hall in which the meeting will be there tomorrow. It has 6,500 seats, bigger than the Sydney Opera House, which was the biggest earlier. So perhaps this is the largest hall in the world to be able to have a meeting of 6,500 together. And of course, city of Delhi is all decked up, cleaned up, and it will show what our managerial capability is for managing 25 heads of state and about 6,500 delegates from as many countries. So managing of that affair will give some kind of a crown of the leader of the global south to India, that is Bharat. Thank you.